and posted individually. We can't put them all in one because our bandwidth will not allow that on the association voice. So at this time, they have all drawn a number in the order that they're going through, and they'll go through the same order all day. And who had number one? Well, Mr. Dowers. Floor is yours.
I can see how the day's going already. I drew number one. My name's Jim Albers. I was elected to the advisory committee beginning in July of 2016, and then the developer appointed me to the board in, I believe, April of 2017. So I've been working on behalf of the community for approximately 2.5 years. I want everyone to know that this is a tough, demanding, and sometimes thankless job. It doesn't pay very well. I got a double raise of 0. But, and at times it takes a toll on me and my family. Sometimes there are certain individuals out here that no matter how the board votes on any issue, they would complain either way. But I do believe that the vast majority of the community supports what the board is undertaking. I do welcome constructive ideas and criticism. Sometimes I don't get constructive ideas, but severe criticism. I am proud of the board accomplishments, and I just kind of wanted to go through some of that. The board directed me when I first was on the advisory committee to facilitate the tree replacement project, phase 1 and phase 2. And in that project, I had hired an arborist to determine which trees would potentially damage homeowners' property. And in order to prevent that property damage to homeowners and also to prevent future HOA costs, I undertook that activity, and we replaced successfully about 190 trees. So that was a major operation that I was involved in. The board also directed me to, after that, to facilitate the rules and regulation changes. And what we did, we appointed a fantastic committee that had very professional skills set for this, and I worked with them extensively over the last year, and that should be coming out in the very near future, probably this week, and it's an extraordinary document. It has extreme search mechanisms and the like. You can have fillable forms. You can link to anything that you want. All you have to do is type in a word like email, and it will take you to whatever rules have that. And it also has extensive links to all of our governance documents like the charter and that type of thing. I have been a member of the Community Association Institute, acronym CAI, and they're committed to the education and furtherance of board management and its members supporting HOAs. They provide us with the best practices on how to operate an HOA. And as a member, I completed several training courses in the furtherance of my fiduciary duties to the HOA in all legal matters. The current board has been working diligently with the developer and the HOA attorney to finalize transition issues. We should have this pretty well resolved, hopefully by the end of this year, and we'll be able to discuss that at the annual meeting. We have been working diligently with the developer and the HOA attorney to forgive the $2.6 million advance/note. We are working on an agreement that we hopefully will execute, which will be a conditional agreement based on the HOA and the developer. That is being worked on at the current time. We also changed the charter to allow street parking because the current charter prohibits any type of street parking. And that will take effect in January of next year, and it will involve some restrictions related to safety. We completed and awarded a 2019 contract for landscaping and maintenance. We also received HOA-funded engineering study, which concluded that there were no infrastructure problems within the community. We substantially reduced insurance costs by approximately $30,000 per year. And by reducing it $30,000 per year, we also added workers' comp for all the volunteers in the community. And we increased our liability coverage. The board also this year approved the refurbishing of the basement, which allows multi-use functionality and efficient space utilization. We recently approved a new website contract which will eliminate the storage and bandwidth problems at a significant savings. So another reduced cost that the board was involved in. It allows for electronic submissions of e-forms and work orders. We've facilitated landscape options based on individual resident needs. You've seen that come out to red, yellow, and green, so that not all residents believe they should be performed the work all around their house. Some just want front yard maintenance, that type of thing. But anyway, we set that process up. We added a new fitness instructor. We approved resurfacing of the indoor pool deck area. We expanded our cleaning services by adding a 30-hour work week. We resurfaced our tennis and pickleball courts. We reduced our HOA liabilities for irrigation and landscaping effective January 1 of 2019. We cleaned up the Montgomery property designated as green space, and we put a trail in there as well. I worked on the,
1 minute.
I thoroughly, I kept dues increases to a minimum. I believe I'm a responsible neighbor. I'm running because I want to protect and ensure quality of life, property values, and needs of the community. I believe I have excellent communication, motivational, and interpersonal skills, that I developed these skills in my 31 years as a federal law enforcement professional. In conclusion, if elected, I will continue to serve the community in a fiduciary way and diligently and professionally work with the developer board and Crestwood residents. I will continue to vote for what is best for the community and not for my personal reasons and not for special interest groups. I want to ensure our community continues to be great and maintain our property values, and I will not vote for any major financial undertakings without seeking the input of the community. I appreciate your consideration and your support. Thank you.
There will be a question session at the end, so just hold your questions, and when everyone has had a turn to speak up here, we'll entertain those questions. Who was next? Okay, Rick?
Okay. All right. As Gary said, I'm filling in for Dan. Well, he unfortunately could not change the trip that they had scheduled a year in advance, and he'll kind of get into that in his write-up. So with that, I'll read Dan's introduction. Good day, fellow Crestwind residents. My name is Dan Dershowitz, and I am running for one of the current HOA board vacancies. First, I want to apologize for not being with you today. However, my wife Harriet and I had planned a vacation for this week and could not reschedule it. I want to thank Rick for presenting my narrative to you today. Since I cannot reply to any questions you may have for me in real time, I am happy to answer any of your questions if you email me or text me, and Rick can provide my contact information. I would also be happy to meet with you next week when I return. Second, my message today is quite simple. I want to continue my involvement and service to the Crestwind community by becoming a member of the HOA board. I believe that my resolve and dedication, coupled with my vision and leadership experience, can help inspire you and other Crestwood residents to find and enact solutions to continue to build our healthy and vibrant community. My wife and I have always been involved in civic and nonprofit organizations, including prior homeowners associations, wherever we live, and our move to Crestwood 4.5 years ago also has been no different. Since moving into Crestwood, we have been involved with Crestwood clubs and committees as well as local volunteer groups. We have experienced firsthand the vibrant, active community which has brought us all together. Whether you live in Crestwood for the amenities and a lifestyle, proximity to family or Lake Lanier, we continue to grow as a community and an extended family. We enjoy amazing lifestyle, exciting amenities and activities, and we are truly a value-added community. We now face the next and most critical phase of our community, self-governance. We will own 100% of our destiny and decisions and require a leadership team that is able to address new challenges and opportunities and to be steady financial stewards with a cohesive vision and strategy reflecting the values of our community. My involvement within the community has encompassed being current chair of our Architectural Review Committee, leader of our Engineering Work Group, and a member of the Marina Committee. I have previously been a member of our Budget and Finance, Safety and Security, and Transition Committees. I have a keen awareness of issues we will need to address together and will assist in developing creative solutions. Many of the issues can be found in the posted engineering reports located on our Crestwood LL website. Some of those issues require addressing in the short term, while others will require longer-term attention. In any case, we will need to address them in a collaborative and proactive manner. We are also blessed with many wonderful, talented people with different life experiences and community service, many of whom lead our committees and clubs. We need to encourage those residents to remain active while engaging others who have skills and talent to consider becoming active in determining our future. If elected, I will bring to bear all of my prior work experience, leadership experience, and transparency in both the nonprofit and public sectors to advance the policies and goals of our Crestwood community. With your help and participation, Crestwood will continue to be a value-added community with an association board that is responsive to community needs and continues to serve all of our residents in the years to come. Thank you for your time.
John, I believe you're up.
Yes. Hello? Okay. I'm going to start with an apology. I've chosen to prepare and then read a statement to you for two, what I think are important reasons. One is that I get to say the same thing to all four groups, and that all four groups hear the same thing from me. And the second is that I wanted to focus my talk with you and not run off on some ad-libbing. So hopefully, this does not come across like a bedtime story. Okay. My name is John Stevens. So many of you know me from my 3 years as vice chair of the Architectural Review Committee. A fair number of you may know me from when I chaired the Amenities Work Group, which was part of my role on the Transition Committee. Some of you may know me from my 3 years as president of the Kayak Club, or as a member and board advisor of the Crestwood Community Fund. And still others of you may know me through my participation in the Crestwood Chorus, the Scotch Club, the Billiards Club, or maybe from playing basketball and softball together. But probably most of you know me as Arlene's husband. And truth be told, I'm very, very happy for that. Arlene and I moved to Crestwood 3.5 years ago after living 30 years outside of Boston, where we raised our 2 daughters. Professionally speaking, I am a psychologist with a doctoral degree from Rutgers. And I have to tell you that the Rutgers University football program makes me want to be a Georgia Bulldog fan.
They're coming back.
So as a psychologist, I'm licensed for professional and private practice. I've worked in a psychiatric acute care inpatient units, outpatient therapy clinics, and in private practice. However, while training at Rutgers in clinical psychology, I also studied management psychology, which was essentially a deep dive into the psychology of organizational leadership and the use and abuse of power to achieve things with and through people. That turned out to be the field that I have spent the last 30 years in my work life. So as a management psychologist, I got to assess and evaluate people for senior management jobs, essentially offering a professional opinion about their psychological readiness, not only for the role, but for the power that came with that role. I also got to evaluate their fit with the circumstances in which they were expected to perform and succeed. However, most of my workday back then was spent in private, one-on-one coaching conversations with senior managers to help them leverage and manage themselves as bosses that other people wanted to work for. They had the job to lead people so that the right business agenda was achieved. My conversations with these bosses also included helping them shape the the company culture, so that the people working there would willingly do the right things in the right way. So for me, it was very meaningful and very satisfying work, because it allowed me to express my foundational character as a helper and a healer by directly enabling the success of other people. And that's why I'm running for a board seat. I want to help and enable the right things to happen within the proper and right time frames, so that we can become a vibrant and healthy, resident-centered, resident-led community. Crestline at Lake Lanier is indeed a nice place to live. I think we can, and I think we should, thank Coulter and Bob Rademacher for what they started. They are slowly relinquishing ownership and management of Crestline, but it will indeed be a while yet before we are totally managing our own affairs. But the turnover process has been started, and we will eventually be leading and managing ourselves. Obviously, there are many things to sort out and contend with during this transition. The current board has indeed had its hands full, and I believe has been making a good faith effort under some very trying circumstances. I think that my professional background and perspective might very well be helpful to them, and likewise helpful to you, the residents of Crestline. Among the things I would try to do if elected are these three things. Number one, I would like to try to elevate and strengthen the communication exchange between board and residents, hopefully allowing for more input from residents and more clarity from the board about the issues they're grappling with. Number two, involve the community in defining a strategic vision and direction. As in, what kind of community do we want to be, and how do we set ourselves apart from other 55 active adult communities?
1 minute.
This obviously has implications for our ability to preserve and perhaps even elevate the resale value of our homes. And number three, engender and support a community culture in which organized groups and clubs intentionally reach out and support one another in ways that heighten the enjoyment and good that all residents experience. In addition to offering my professional background and experience, I would also bring some personal beliefs which govern how I conduct myself. Here are 3 of them. Number 1, how you treat people says a lot about you, about your character, your substance, and how you view yourself relative to other people. Number 2, I don't know everything, and I don't need to know everything. That's why God created lots of other smart people. People who enjoy being content experts in their field, like finance, engineering, law, even psychology. I believe that my value add is in knowing how to leverage that and integrate that so that we find the best right answers. And the last one, number 3, I am nowhere near being perfect. I make mistakes, usually because I have misunderstood something. Hence, I put extra effort into listening and learning, to include trying to see things from someone else's perspective. Hopefully the people who know me from the many forums and activities that I mentioned earlier would concur that that's how I conduct myself. I would continue to try to be that way, whether I'm on the board or not. So thank you for your attention.
Who's next? Paul?
Technology works, that's good. My name is Bob Rivers. I moved to Crestwind in January of 2012, so I'm a long-term resident and been involved in many activities. My background and training is in science teacher preparation. I spent a number of years at Purdue University in preparing elementary and secondary science teachers. In addition to that, I was a dean of the School of Education for 12 years, which required me to deal with multiple constituencies. And those multiple constituencies were difficult to deal with at times because they ran at cross purposes with each other. So the students didn't always like what the faculty was doing. The faculty certainly didn't like what the administrators were doing. And all of them didn't like what I was doing. So it was a challenging experience, but a very fulfilling one. To see students graduate, to see faculty get awards, and to facilitate that was an exciting thing. So that's part of the background I bring to you today. In addition, I've been involved in many clubs and activities at Crestwind, specifically the Garden Club is one of them. But more than that, very early on, I was appointed to the advisory committee by the developer, and spent 3 or 4 years, 4 years in the advisory committee role. The last portion of that was as chair of the advisory committee. For a brief time, I was appointed to the board, along with Robert Horn, and subsequent to that, I was appointed as chair by the board of the transition committee. The transition committee was a very complex structure, dealing with a number of sub-working groups that dealt with such things as the marina, turnover the marina, engineering, finance, rules and regulations, and so forth. So we spent a lot of time helping to identify issues and problems associated with those in transition. We made regular reports to the board on those issues. Many of you may have seen me making those reports to the board over time. Earlier this year, the present board decided to dissolve the transition committee, and our work at that point was did not go forward. I think that my goals in looking at all that experience, and many of you know me and have had conversations with me about issues related to transition for quite a while. My goals are relatively simple, but extremely powerful. They are to assist in the transition from a developer-centered community, which we are really right now. We are really controlled by and operated by the developer through the developer appointed board. We also need to think about what we are going to do as we transition to a resident-centered community. We need to begin to work through the transition in moving to a developer-centered community. That was one of the reasons the Transition Committee put together an amenities work group to make sure that we were clear from the residents' viewpoint, that we were clear about the direction we needed to take in that regard. So the first goal is to assist in the transition from a developer-centered community to a resident-centered community. My second goal is to work collaboratively with residents, property management staff, clubs, committees, to develop a community vision and promote values that are the core of our mission. And our mission really is to support the intellectual and physical well-being of our residents, along with engaging them in social, educational, and recreational opportunities. Those decisions need to be made by working collaboratively with the residents, so that we're not out in front, doing something that residents don't identify with, or that we don't lag and not address issues that the residents feel are very important. My third goal is to help the policy, financial, and other decisions in the best interest of the community as a whole. And this is the role of a board, a resident board, and that is to set policy, see that that policy is carried out by the property management group, and to make sure that policy relates back to the values of our community. My fourth goal is to foster input from the community on specific policy issues that affect a lot of residents. Before we adopt a policy, we need to have a lot of input from residents so that we understand the implications of that policy. I, like John, we're not perfect, we're not even close to it, and so we can't make those decisions in a vacuum. We have to make those decisions with input from a large number of residents. My fifth goal is to keep the community informed of board decisions and the basis for those decisions. It's not enough to publish a decision on the board. You really have to not only publish that decision, but also inform the community of what led to that decision and what the community said in order to move in that direction. Finally, to promote the use of common areas in such a way as to reflect the shared vision and mission. We could use these common areas in all kinds of different ways, but the key is, what are our values as a community? What do we most want to do? How do we most want to use these facilities? And that's why we established an amenities group, work group, to try to get ahead of the game and plan for the use of those amenities down the future, and to talk about the values that we wanted to be expressed, the residents wanted to be expressed in the design of those facilities. My heart is for this community. I've lived here for quite a while now. My heart is for this community, and my service is for the good of the community. And I want to foster conversations that lead us in the right direction. I would appreciate you voting for me. Thank you so much.
Ron? Before he starts, is that music in there bothering anybody? Okay, I just want to make sure.
Is it working okay? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for attending today and listening to the presentations from the candidates applying for the open board positions. My name is Ron Mitchell. I am currently the president of the Association Board of Directors. I'm probably better known as Rosemary's husband. So Still a little John's thunder over there. As a way of background, I was born and raised in a small steel mill town in western Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh. So I'm a Steelers fan, so please don't hold that against me. I started a banking career about 2 years before I was drafted into the military, which interrupted the pursuit of my banking career. I applied for and was accepted to the Army Artillery Officer Candidate School in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, from which I graduated in August of 1966 and was commissioned as second lieutenant. I spent 12 years in the military as an Army Artillery Officer, with most of my assignments being overseas. I had assignments in Korea, Vietnam, and 2 tours of duty in Germany. After my military service, I had over 30 years in the banking profession. I held various positions, most of them in managerial level, some operations, staff work at the regional level, and also as a regional manager. Most of the time that I spent in banking was overseas, working for Bank of America under contract with the Department of Defense Military Banking Division. I moved, along with my wife Rosemary and son, to Crestwood in June of 2013. And I began my volunteer work a few months later in November of that year, when I was assigned to the Rules and Regs Committee, which was an independent committee back in those days. And my first job was to update the Rules and Regulations Manual, which is always a very enjoyable task. That was completed after a few months, and in the spring of 2014, I was interviewed and selected to serve on the advisory committee, and have served continuously on the advisory committee and the board since that time. I was on the advisory committee when it was elevated to the status of a board of directors in April, it was March-April timeframe of 2017. As an advisory committee member, board member, I've been involved in almost every action, every vote on every issue that is facing our community. Some of the more significant actions and achievements involve things that you've heard Jim say, because he's the vice chair and we're on the same board, so we may overlap a little on some of these things. One of the major things that occurred early on was the introduction of open board meetings. We've always had an open meeting where people could come in, and they would come in 1 or 2 at a time and sit in on an advisory committee meeting or a board meeting. Well, we moved it to a format similar to what we have here, where a large number of